Well, good evening, everyone. For our midweek gospel reflection, I'd like to share with you about another incident which we come across in the Gospel of Luke. I looked at it again last week in my morning Bible readings, and it's been on my mind since then. So let me read it to you now. It's the story of the healing of the 10 lepers, which we find in Luke 17, verses 11 to 19. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus travelled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Just a brief thought. A couple of years ago, I had a review, an appraisal of how I was getting on in my last church. And part of the exercise involved the gathering of what is often referred to as 360-degree feedback. You've maybe had something similar done in your own job. Views on your performance gathered from a number of your colleagues. And I can still vividly remember the words of my friend Phil as he handed me this document which contained a summary of people's feedback. This is what he said: "Bear in mind that the longer time goes on, the more your strengths become taken for granted and the more your weaknesses become a source of irritation." It's very well put and telling insight. My guess is that it's one which will resonate with many of us. If we're honest, most of us will feel taken for granted at times. Maybe it's an aspect of our work which never seems to be noticed by anyone else. Maybe it's something we do around the home or even a role in church, and we feel a keen sense of frustration, maybe even an anger or resentment or sadness at times, which goes with the sense that nobody seems to pay attention. Nobody ever seems to say thank you. And I've been mulling all of this over while thinking about this story which we find here in Luke 17 and asking myself a question. I wonder if Jesus ever felt taken for granted. I wonder if any of this was going through his mind as these 10 lepers came to him for healing. I wonder if even he half expected this response, not out of any kind of prophetic X-ray vision power, he can see into people's souls. I wonder instead if that would just have been a reflection of how Jesus knows what people are like. I wonder how many of these lepers he actually expected to come back and say thanks. And we'll never know the answer to those questions, and yet we can't help feeling, whatever his expectations, 1 out of 10 surely seems to be coming in on the low side. I mean, you read the story, and it's clear that even Jesus himself is disappointed. You can sense his exasperation. Only one of them returns. And I wonder what conclusion we're to draw from the fact that there appears to be more gratitude on the part of the figure who's an outsider, that the person who probably had the lowest sense of presumption or entitlement also turns out to be the one who takes the trouble to come back to Jesus and say thanks. And I also found myself wondering, why were they so ungrateful? I mean, this is a miraculous healing. a wonderful event. To be healed from leprosy isn't just to have your skin condition made right. It's to be taken from being an outsider to being allowed within the confines of the worshipping community, to have the priest say, "You're clean, you're back." It's to go from being someone who is excluded to one who can be a full participant. So why don't they say thanks? Is it because these nine are all just selfish, ungrateful people? Or is it something different? Is it a way of behaving and thinking which a lot of us might have in common with them? The fact that when you're ill or you're struggling in some other way, so that your nose is always pressed up close against your desperation, you will do anything to get your problem solved, to get your needs addressed, to get your healing. And yet, once the issue is dealt with, once you have your resolution, once you're in the clear, in the place of freedom and security, and you've got your problem sorted, you don't mean to, you just forget. I wonder if it's just that these 10 lepers moved on very quickly. And once you've moved on, when life seems straightforward, when you don't have too many desperate concerns to deal with, when you think in your naivety or your overconfidence or complacency that you're doing okay and that you can deal yourself with anything that comes your way, when you stop feeling dependent, you probably stop feeling thankful as well. And so here's the thing. I read this story and I wonder, how much has God done for me today? And have I really stopped to say thanks? Where has Jesus been today? And have I been taking him for granted? How many blessings has he given me? And have I paused long enough to see they were there? How many situations did I bring to him this morning when I woke up? Conversations I knew I needed to have, which would be hard, or tasks which I had to complete and I felt I didn't have the energy, jobs which I knew would be complicated. And when they went smoothly, when my worst fears didn't come true, did I take the time to return and give praise? To use the language of Jesus in this story? How much health has come my way? How much provision? How much friendship and care? How many grace-filled moments? Was I alert to them? Will I throw myself at Jesus' feet and say thank you like this Samaritan did? Let's finish with a prayer. Jesus, when we think of the stories we read in your Gospels, we are struck time and time again by your mercy, your willingness to love the unlovely, touch the untouchables, heal the sick. How many did you give this healing to? How many did you feed? How many did you touch without them coming back to say thanks? And how many are your gifts to us which we're not taking time to acknowledge? So we pause and say thank you now, and we look to cultivate a deeper, more alert, more attentive gratitude in days to come. Amen. Bye for now, friends, and I'll see you soon. God bless.